Hi, I'm Benjamin Payne. At the K-12 Education Office at Hillsdale College, we support school founding groups and their efforts to start classical schools across the country. Finding the right leader is one of the first and most important steps to building a successful school. While we do consider experience in education, we seek candidates who exhibit unwavering personal integrity, honesty, courage, and servant-hearted leadership. Perhaps that's you. If you're looking to engage in fulfilling, impactful, and challenging work protecting our nation's future and building up the next generation of virtuous citizens, we'd love to hear from you. I'm looking for strong school leaders right now. Learn more about how you can make a difference at hillsdale.edu/leader. hillsdale.edu/LEADER. That's hillsdale.edu/leader.
Welcome to the Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education Podcast, bringing you insight into classical education and its unique emphasis on human virtue and moral character, responsible citizenship, content-rich curricula, and teacher-led classrooms. Now your host, Scot Bertram.
Thanks for listening. The Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education Podcast is part of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. More episodes at podcast.hillsdale.edu or wherever you get your audio. You also can find more information on topics and ideas discussed on this show at our website, k12.hillsdale.edu. We're joined today by David Yu, previously a calculus teacher and also Dean of Students at Ascent Classical Academy of Northern Colorado. That's in Windsor. David, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We appreciate you being here today. We're talking about how mathematics can help develop a moral compass. You've given some presentations on this topic, and I know that you argue we shouldn't always focus on teaching students what's right versus wrong, but rather what's right versus what's almost right. So why is that distinction so important in moral education, and where does mathematics play a role in it?
Yes. So I first think that we should teach kids what's right from wrong. But I think that when we only teach them that, we miss a great opportunity. Because kids so often, when we're talking about what's right and wrong, either they already know it or they've justified it in their own heads in a certain way. And what I think we can do to help benefit those kids in the long run, developing their moral compass, is to talk about what is right versus what's almost right. Mm-hmm. Because they live in that world of what is almost right. They justify so many different kinds of things that really aren't right, and deep down they know it's not right, but because, unfortunately, we've given them so many tools of how to justify and argue and everything in a classical school, they use those tools to justify what is almost right, and I think that we need to point that out more frequently.
Man, I'm a parent, and I just hear all these conversations. Like, I know you said come upstairs, but you didn't say when, you didn't say now. Like, that's where I envision this almost right, almost right.
Yes.
You describe math as a way to construct and test truth. How does engaging with mathematical truth mirror that process of moral reasoning?
Yes, definitely. As I stated earlier, often kids are taking what they think, what they're justifying as right, and claiming that that is right. And we know that that's wrong, and they know that that's wrong. Mm-hmm. But in mathematics, it's harder to talk your way out of it. So in mathematics, there is, you can prove something is wrong. And sometimes, as I show in my presentations, that there are some things that might look right, and as you're going through the process, everything even might feel right, but you come out with something that is wrong. And so in mathematics, you have the opportunity to delve into that, into this in an abstract nature. Aristotle said that the dialectic, the logic stage of learning, is actually broken into two categories, the demonstration and then the dialectic. The demonstration is the mathematical side where you can actually come to a very definitive proof that something is right or wrong, true or false. But the dialectic is what happens in the kids' heads. And the dialectic is everything else that says there's room for error and I can't actually prove it, but the mathematical side of things says, I can build that skill, I can build that ability to discern right from wrong and right from almost right, so that I can actually take this into other categories, other areas, such as, is a friend a good friend?
Yeah, right. You use the example of a flawed math proof where each step seems true, but the conclusion ends up being false. So what lesson does that teach students about ethical decision making in real life?
It means that as they go through their processes of making decisions in life, the biggest goal is to make sure that they make good, virtuous decisions. That is more important than anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we really want the kids to do is to be able to say, I might be wrong. They have to be able to look at things and say, I have information in front of me, and I have that information that leads me to believe a certain thing, but I could be wrong. And I think that mathematical proof is something that says, as I was stating earlier, that Aristotle can actually says it's a demonstration that says you can prove that is wrong, even though it felt right the entire time until you get to that conclusion. And it's wonderful when I do that presentation, because as I walk through it and I'm working with teachers and they're very happy and they can say, yes, this is true, this is true, this is true, this is true. And then suddenly, and it's slightly different for many people, but it's this wonderful look on their face where they say, hey, wait a minute, it's wrong. And it's non-threatening because it's in this world of mathematics. Mm-hmm. But if we can have them realize that happens not only in mathematics, but in other areas, then they can hopefully more readily accept that and take that information, that process, and then apply it to their moral life.
Now, I could be wrong is a phrase that's difficult for adults to say many times. Have you found that with students, with younger people, it's easier to get to that point or even tougher to get to that point?
Ooh, I actually think it's the same. And what I think is the most important piece of getting both an adult or a child to say I am wrong is for me to say I am wrong. The more often I can look at something and say, I believe this to be true, now let's tear that apart. Let's look at all the pieces. And if I can come to a conclusion that I am wrong, and the more I say that, both to adults and to kids, the more willing they are to open up. So at our school, if you were to talk with the kids, if you were to talk with the kids that were in my calculus class, if you were to talk with the teachers, they may not remember distinctly, but they can remember probably emotionally that I do frequently say, you are right and I am wrong. Because if I am wrong, I want kids and everybody to know that I am not above truth. That is the most important thing. And I will never try to manipulate truth for my benefit.
Talking with David Yu, he is a dean of students at Ascent Classical Academy of Northern Colorado, about how mathematics can help develop a moral compass. You spoke about creating a sense of wonder, both confusion and clarity in your classroom. Why is wonder such a vital part of forming a student's moral compass?
Yes. Wonder has two meanings. Wonder, a person goes through the state of wonder first when they are ignorant of something, because they wonder what is happening. But then once they understand the process and all the intricate details, then they have the other sense where they're full of knowledge, and now it becomes wonderful because they're amazed at everything. So in order for that to happen, we first have to show the kids that they don't know as much information as they think they know. There's something called the Dunning-Kruger effect, and it says that people who don't know as much about something tend to overestimate their abilities, and it's because they don't know that much. And conversely, the people that do know a lot about something tend to underestimate their abilities because they know all the details that is involved in this. So I think that the first thing that we have to do is we have to show the kids you don't know everything and create that first sense of wonder. And then secondly, we have to give them some kind of confidence that they should listen to us. So if they don't know something, and I don't have a good reputation or a good rapport with my kids, then they're not going to listen to me. So the second piece is I have to make sure that we have built a good relationship so that they see me as somebody that they can talk with. And then they also have to see me as some kind of, I'm going to say, expert in the matter, so that they say, here is somebody that is worth listening to.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, the students have to find their way to that solution. They have to find their way of breaking out of that ignorance and into a solution that is simple, elegant, and perhaps counterintuitive. And then that can bring them from the world of wonder and ignorance to the world of wonder and amazement.
There's an argument, that math is just neutral. Math is just numbers. Math is just logic. How would you respond to that idea and the idea that math can shape moral understanding?
Well, my response would be, aren't letters just letters? So we don't often think that history and literature don't meet the needs of developing a moral compass.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're often called the humanities. I have a joke that I like to say sometimes. I say, if literature and history are called the humanities, are math and science called the inhumanities? But letters come together to form words.
Mm-hmm.
Words come together to form sentences. Sentences come together to form paragraphs, and so on. And at some point, we have the opportunity to take those words, those sentences, those paragraphs, and start discussing morals and start discussing those things. And math is the same. So we can actually start taking numbers and start putting them together in a certain way. We start putting them in orders, and then we start counting, and then we start subtracting and adding and multiplying and dividing and going through everything past calculus.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, we can start talking about what is right from wrong and what is right from almost right, and start talking about the moral code there as well.
You linked mathematical logic to Einstein and his confidence in his theories. He built them from known truths. Can you help students to gain that kind of confidence in moral reasoning without becoming too arrogant, too rigid?
Yes. If we haven't done that, we've actually not met our goal as classical educators. So the first thing is that we're always after truth. Nobody is above the truth like I mentioned earlier. Secondly, we have to see the flaws, that we potentially have flaws in our own thought processes.
Mm-hmm.
And when we see that, we have to think, where can I find the problem with my argument, or what can I find truth that is better than what I have here? And so what that forces us to do is actually to go look and talk with others. So that hopefully will overcome the arrogance and the pride, is that you have to say, if you're doing it right, you have to say, I can't do this alone. I cannot live in a bubble that if I do that, then I'm saying I can find truth on my own, which is kind of saying I'm equivalent to truth.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be foolish. So I have to go outside and start talking with other people. And so if we do this well as teachers, then not only can we do this without the kids becoming arrogant and rigid, that's how they will end up.
What does classical education uniquely offer in helping students bridge abstract truths like math with lived virtues like honesty or courage?
Yes. Well, the first thing is that if this is done well or done properly, a classical education, it should, in my opinion, show kids that math, science, history, literature, art, band, all of that is actually not a big deal. It's inconsequential. What is important is, and I'm going to use a nice classical phrase, truth, goodness, and beauty.
Mm-hmm.
But they are transcendental. So how do we teach kids truth, goodness, and beauty? Well, we have to have some kind of medium. And that medium happens to be math, science, history, band, orchestra, and all of those things. So if we do it well, what we find is that the goal of classical education is teaching those transcendentals. And how is this different from other schools? Other schools focus on test scores, focus on the material things. And I like to think about Plato's Republic when he talks about the divided line. And he says that if you take a line and you cut it into two unequal parts, I won't go into the whole depth of it, but he says that you have, at the very end of this line is the good, and that's what we're after. At the first part of it is the material world, and at the second part is the invisible world, which includes that good at the very end. And so the material world is used only to get to the invisible world, to get to the good. And unfortunately, traditional schools and some classical schools that claim that they're classical live in that material world. So I think that if done properly, that's the difference that helps the kids get to the virtues and the good.
If a teacher wanted to begin integrating moral reasoning into the math classroom, where would you recommend they start? What's the first step toward making math a moral subject?
The first step is that you have to truly believe what I stated earlier, and that is that the goal of education is to help kids become better people. That their goal is to achieve truth, goodness, and beauty. That's the very first step. You have to believe that. And here are some of the signs that say you have accomplished it or that you haven't accomplished it. When a kid asks a question such as, why do I have to learn this? If you say, it's for the test, that's the material world, you haven't accomplished it. If you say things like, it's on the AP exam, you haven't accomplished it. If you say things like, you need to know it for the next class, you have not accomplished it. So a sign of this is to say, you don't need to know this. This is inconsequential. At the end of the day, at the end of your life, how much mathematics you know does not matter. However, what does matter is how good of a person you are. There's a nice quote I heard once by a guy named Albert Pike, and he said, what you do for yourself dies with you, but what you do for others lives forever. And I think that that's the thing that we have to think about. And all of those things that we do for the material world are the things that are holding us back from accomplishing things. So when your question is, what's the first step a teacher has to do? They have to truly believe it. And then the second piece, so I'm going to add to this, is you have to look at all the obstacles that we do because we just normally have done them for hundreds of years, and we just think that they're right, and they're actually obstacles to our goal.
Yeah. David Yu is previously a calculus teacher and also Dean of Students at Ascent Classical Academy of Northern Colorado. They're in Windsor there. David, thanks so much for joining us here on the Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education Podcast.
Thank you very much.
I'm Scot Bertram. We invite you to like us on Facebook. Search for Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education. You also can follow us on Instagram at Hillsdale_K-12. That's Hillsdale_K-12 on Instagram. Thank you for listening to the Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education Podcast, part of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. More at podcast.hillsdale.edu or wherever you get your audio.